Bibi Fahodi, a black family, waits first. Hotep, as always, here at the School of Urban Philosophy. We are straight up, straightforward, and straight to the point. Welcome to another episode, another session. As always, we are in session when we are here at the School of Urban Philosophy. Yes, man, we missed last week. That was my birthday week. Last Thursday was the 21st. If I'm not mistaken, of the 21st. But anyway, that's the reason why I didn't come on last week. Was enjoying that day and just taking in some of the energy that was generated. Hotep, brother Asafo. Hotep, my brother, how you doing? So we're gonna have to make up tonight. We will make up for last week. We will get into some things. We're gonna dig into some things. Excuse me. You know, there's a lot of things happening within the black world, within the black community. And it's very important, it's essential that we pay attention to what's happening. And, oh, excuse me. Excuse me, brothers. So yeah, we pay attention to what's happening. And as we pay attention, it's critical that we do not allow ourselves to get pulled into the methodology of looking at things from the position of being surprised, right? We have to refrain from that thinking, the thinking that the injustices, the wrongs, the evils that are being perpetrated against Black people are some sort of anomaly. No, they are consistent with the history and the nature of this society that we live in. So we must push against feeling surprised and become more critical and very intentional with how we look at things, and looking at things through the clearest lenses. You know, the clearest lenses. As this is how we must look at things. You know, so for us, you know, there are a number of factors that are at play, and we must be able to, in a very rapid way, we must be able to weave it all together to make some sense of what's happening. I'll give you an example. I listen to a lot of our people at times over critiquing, you know, the Black rappers as if these rappers possess the capacity to deliver anything other than what they are delivering. Now, yes, some of those rappers, you know, were afforded opportunities where they were able to experience things growing up. So yes, they do have knowledge about some of what's happening, but to a great extent, the majority of them are ignorant. They don't have any type of political consciousness, political awareness, no social consciousness. They don't have the insight to deliver anything other than what they're delivering. I don't expect a Megan to do anything other than what she's doing. I don't expect that. So I'm not surprised by what she put out there. I'm not surprised by what Wayne put out. I'm not surprised by the stuff that Kanye said. That doesn't surprise me, right? It's an expectation that idiots deliver idiocy, right? That's an expectation. And we have to become more realistic in our approach as to being idealistic. We approach the Black dilemma idealistically. Ideally, I would love for all of us to be doing well in a sound community somewhere in Africa. Ideally, yes. Realistically, no. So that's how we have to approach this situation. Are we going to be idealist in the crippling sense, or are we going to be realist, you know, in the authentic sense? You know, now some realists are idealists in the sense that we have ideals, but you can't live through your ideals and think that your ideals are real. Like, your ideals are the things that you aspire to. The reality is what you use to assess your ideals, the reality, what's real. And this is how we have to approach the situation that we are currently dealing with. We have to get our people up to speed. We have to get them up to speed. Science, we got to get them in science. They got to become more scientific in how they think, how we look at reality. We have to be more scientific. We have to be very, very literate. We have to be able to read and comprehend. Because oftentimes we have people that can read, but we can't comprehend. So we have to get up to speed. We have to be real, man. We can't cut no corners. And oftentimes, in our attempt to not hurt feelings, we don't be honest about our situation. We don't be honest about our situation. A lot of us that's doing the work or in the movement, we don't have the comprehension that's needed to be effective. We don't have the political insight that's needed. We don't have the revolutionary, sagacity, man. The social awareness. We don't have that. And the reason we don't have it is because people are not going through processes. People are not being trained and educated the way that they should be. We believe that we can just wake up one day and just be mad and angry and just, shoot from the hip and think that's enough. No, you can be mad and angry, but that anger and that madness must be shaped and fashioned. It must be disciplined. That's what's needed, man. So we have to be able to create those institutions with competent instructors and facilitators. Like the leadership got to be a profound leadership. Think about it. Marcus Garvey was profound. Malcolm X was profound. Dr. Harry P. Newton was profound. Ella Baker was profound. Fannie Lou Hamer was profound. Like we have to get to the point where we are producing profound, solid Black men and Black women. Like we gotta read these books. We gotta read the books. You gotta summarize the books. You gotta throw away what's no good in the books and keep the good. You have to know how to do that. So if you're reading, what I got right here. So that's a book. It's called The Anti-Slavery Appeal, American Abolitionism After 1830, right? So it's dealing with the abolitionist movement after the year 1830. Now, it's a lot of good stuff in there, but then there's some stuff that really I can push to the side. But I have to know how to do that. You have to know how to do that. You have to be scientific in how you enter into your reading process. You have to be able to compare the information and run that information against other information, primary documents if necessary, right? So to become profound, you're going to have to spend some money. You can't get deep and you don't spend money, right? Because you got to buy material. You got to buy books. You have to buy lectures. Sometimes you got to travel to certain libraries. You got to order documents. You got to spend money. Right? You have to invest in that knowledge. It's an investment. And that investment is you. You become the product. You become the product of that investment. Invest in yourself. So you gotta, we gotta dig in. We gotta go that hard to make sure we are producing quality people. Herbert Harrison in the early 20th century was profound. You're talking about, look at the 1800s. We're talking about, Maria Stewart, profound. Mary Church Terrell, profound. These women wasn't to be played with. Ida B. Wells, profound. Courageous, big heart. Love Black people, but profound in their thinking. My McLeod Bethune, profound. I oftentimes argue that there's a crisis in consciousness within the Black community. I'll say that again. There's a crisis in consciousness within the Black community. Our consciousness isn't as deep as it used to be, but it can become deep. It's going to require a lot of work, but it's doable. And we have to be that much committed to it, to the process. We have to be willing to develop processes and move people through processes and enter processes ourselves. Right? We got to look at what's happening within the Black community and figure out like how we're going to engage this stuff that's happening. You know, the mass incarceration, how are we going to engage that? You know, because the one thing they're not going to stop doing is building these prisons. They're not going to stop that. And as long as they're building these prisons, if there becomes a need to fill these prisons, right? So the need to fill the prisons justifies the behaviors that leads to the mass incarceration of Black men and Black women. Right? So we have to think about that. We got to think about, you know, how are we becoming entrapped? Like what are some of the things that lead to us becoming entrapped, you know, within these torture chambers? But the Sakati, race first, right? The entrapment starts with the failure in the education, right? So let's play it out a little bit. So we go off to school, you know, your mother, your father, your grandmother, your aunt, whomever, they send you off to, I think we talked about this before and don't agree with each other. History will show that consciousness is shaped by the time. Right now, we're in a retarded time, so low consciousness. So I don't agree with. I'm not in disagreement with that. I think the difference. I think you think we disagree because I'm still optimistic about it. It can be developed. I don't disagree. I know history is a part of all of that. You know, I know that. I'm clear. But I've been a part of. I think the reason why I see it differently is because I've been a part of being in prison and coming into an environment where everybody is thinking about drugs and thinking about nothing. And I was able to inject the consciousness and revolutionize inside their prison. So I've seen it work before. So I know that consciousness can be developed. I'm not thinking, and my mind is not thinking about an overnight process. So oftentimes people might hear me talk, they think I'm thinking in terms of an overnight process. I'm not thinking about an overnight process. The same way consciousness was high before, it wasn't just because history is made by people. It doesn't make itself. Like history doesn't make itself. History is relative to people. History is not an absolute phenomenon. It's relative. History is relative to people. And the conditions that we find within history are the conditions created by people. So yes, we are saying the same thing. I think I'm thinking about it differently than you're thinking about it, but I don't disagree. Right? History is not an absolute. It's not an absolute point in time. Right? History is relative to the people within an era of time. And the people are the ones that create the conditions in that era of time that impacts people that produces the consciousness in that time period. So yes, you know, we are saying the same things. We're looking at it from two different angles. You know, for me, the work is that we got to consistently do the work no matter where we at. You know, no matter how things look, you know, we got to keep doing the work. I can easily say, well, damn, boy, I'm tired of, you know, talking to all these people out here, man, and they not getting it. I can easily say that, you know, because a lot of people don't get it. I can easily say, man, you know, we're not getting it. We're not waking up. I can easily say that. I'm not naive to where we at as a people. I'm extremely clear as to where we are at. I choose not to give up. I choose not to stop working. I choose not. That's the difference. You know, I'm not naive. I know we got a long way to go. I know our heads is in the ground. I know we walking around, you know what I'm saying, in the circles. I know we infighting. I know we beating each other up. I know we working backwards. I'm clear about all of that. You know what I'm saying? I know we undoing our own efforts. I'm clear about all of that. But in the midst of all of that, I still see all the beauty in us. Because I was a part of that before. See, I was a part of that. I was one of those individuals that a person could have said, he ain't going to get it. So that's the reason why I take a totally different position, because I was in that pool of individuals who didn't care, who was a menace to society, who was totally unclear, who was backwards. I was a part of that pool once before. And if I know, I know the degree to how degenerate I was. And if I can come out of it, we can come out of it. So that's why it appears as if we're on two different fences. We're not on two different fences. I just can't give up on us. And I just can't take a total position that, we can't move forward. It may not happen. It may not happen in my lifetime. It may not happen in my son's lifetime. I don't know when it may happen. All I know is that when it's all said and done, I need to be on the right side of history. That's all I know. So yeah, I'm clear about all of that. I'm very clear about that. I spent the last 30 years of my life studying this process. So when I do talk, I'm not shooting from the hip, and I'm not shooting from a place of deep study. In most cases, I'm speaking from what I've experienced. Right? In most cases, most of the men you see around me, or anybody see around me, these are men who was once a part of the problem. All of them was once a part of the problem. But because of coming in contact with me, because of me working with them, these brothers now are part of the solution. So I know that it can happen. Because I got too much experience seeing it happen. I got too much experience seeing it happen. Too many people. So that's where we at with it. So we believe it or not, we are saying the same thing. And I do agree. Actually, people can change, but a massive shift is just idealistic. You give an impression that we can do a mass consciousness shift when that just has never happened. I don't give that impression. That's how you read into it. That's what you think I'm saying. That's not what I'm saying. Like I don't believe in a mass migration of black people out of the United States of America. I'm not saying that. I'm not saying tomorrow 4 million black people gonna wake up. That's not what I'm saying. That's not what I'm saying at all. I'm gonna be very clear what I'm saying. What I'm saying is this. I'm saying that part of the process that needs to be done, I think we've always did this as a people. I think we've always did it. Part of the strategy has to be developing consciousness. There's not a time period in human history when a people have not moved against an oppressor to bring forth liberation that consciousness building wasn't a part of it. That's not nowhere in history. And like I said, I know I didn't get a chance to answer your question when you asked me about who I studied or whatever. In my green book, there's a section of my green book that says revolutionary quotables. So if you go back and then look at those revolutionary quotables, that's all what I've read, right? So I've looked at all the major struggles, and all the struggles throughout human history always has an element or component of consciousness raising within it. All of them. History says that, right? So I follow history. I'm not saying it's going to be massive. I'm saying that it has to be a part of it. I'm saying somebody, it has to be, somebody got to do that. The same way somebody has to be the one that says, you know what, we need to work in silence. And I'm going to be the one that's going to work in silence. Somebody got to do that. And I can't stand on the sideline and say, hey, man, that's never going to work. You're not going to get people, man, to move in silence. I can't be the one to say that, because somebody got to take that position to say, I'm going to be the one that's going to move in silence. And if I can get others to follow along, then that's what happens. Somebody got to be the one that says, you know what, man, I need to push a hard scientific line. I'm not going to say you're wrong for pushing that scientific line. I'm not going to say, well, you'll never get these people to be scientifically literate, because it has to happen. You know what I'm saying? So that's what I'm saying. I'm not saying it's going to be massive. I'm saying that if it's one person at a time, then that helps. It may not, it helps. It helps the process. That's what I'm saying. I'm not saying it's massive. No, I don't believe that at all. It could be a massive. I've never seen that. It wasn't a massive shift when Marcus Garvey was around. That wasn't a massive shift. It took time. It took time for people to get on board and get involved. You needed a Hubert Harrison, before a Garvey in New York doing what he was doing. Harrison was necessary. And before Harrison, we needed what? you needed a Bishop Henry McNeil Turner pushing race patriotism before Harrison. So you needed him pushing that and doing what he was doing, and Harrison stepping on that and standing on that and laying the groundwork, you see what I'm saying, for that radicalism. And so getting the soil fertile for Marcus Garvey. So when Garvey pops on the scene, you know what I'm saying, it ain't Garvey just being this great massive organizer. It's the people that predated Garvey and the work that they was doing. They played a part in laying the soil. So that's where I'm at with it. Boy, you hard on our people, man. You know, that's like the people telling Nat Turner, like, hey man, it don't make no sense, Nat, what you trying to do. You know what I'm saying? Nat, we needed Nat Turner. You know, we needed Nat Turner. Nat Turner, you know, it played a part, man. You know, but yeah, I do agree though. You know, and what I would say to you is this, and I like to tell people, you know, see what I think we was as a people, especially those of us that have a sense of what's going on, we need to be real clear about those who we are working with and know. I say be clear in the sense that you really know me, right? So if you really know me, you would know that I would never think that sleeping people are going to wake up like that, right? That's not what I believe. Even Malcolm X said it. He said one of my mistakes was trying to do what? He said try to organize the sleeping people. Right? Even Malcolm came to the realization and said that. You know what I'm saying? And I like to let people know, like I am a serious student of history. You know, there ain't too much in history that I haven't really studied. I still study history. You know, I would never stop studying it. You know, it's one of the things that I look at the most. You know, but I'm very practical in what I do. Not only am I practical, I'm realistic about what I do. Not only am I realistic, I like to base what I do based on the things that I've done that works. You know, I don't have a problem with abandoning the project when it's not working. I would abandon it in a heartbeat, right? I'm not idealistic. I'm not going to keep on working, trying to do something, and it's proven to be ineffective, you know? So the things that I do are based on what I have done. You know, so when I'm closer to people, they can hear more about what I have done, and then they can understand me a little bit more better. Like, okay, I see why I say this. You know what I'm saying? Because I have transformed people, literally. You know, I have seen. You know what I'm saying? I have been shipped around the Maryland Penal Institution. You know what I'm saying? Consistently from one jail to the next, to the next, to the next, to the next. You know, because what? Because I'm waking people up, and it's transforming people. You know, movements are starting, it's happening. But like, I'm the recipient of that. So I know it can happen. I know what we can do. I know how powerful we are. You know, even in our sleeping state, we still impact the world. Not necessarily in the way we would like to impact it, but we still impact the world. You know, but no, I'm not naive to what needs to be done and how we need to do it. You know, I just don't think I would be any good if I did not bring to the people, you know, knowledge about who we are and how we can move forward as a people. You know, if I did not come to us to speak about, you know, our strengths and our powers, because I think most of us, we probably cannot, you know, break down all the political and economic dynamics that are working against us. Most of us probably can't break all that stuff down. But I believe to a great extent, most of us feel, you know, we can see it. We probably can't even identify it and articulate it. But I believe most of our people have a strong sense of the hardships that we are confronted with as a people. And I believe that because we already have a sense of that, I believe that if we can provide people with an avenue of how they can get involved, I believe we can begin to get more people involved. And I believe that work there is part of the overall work. You know, just thinking about Amilcar Cabral, right? A lot of people like to quote Amilcar Cabral, and he's quoted as being by many people. You know, many people say, well, he's one of the greatest political minds of the 20th century. You know what I'm saying? Most people says that. You know what I'm saying? Even I heard Kilimanjaro Baba Elder Takar, you know, talk about Amilcar Cabral. But even studying Amilcar Cabral, he'll tell you. You know what I'm saying? One of the things he says this straight out. He said we had to raise national consciousness And he said it took them three years to do that. And he said it was an arduous 3 years in order for them to get the success that they got in 10 years in Guinea-Bissau, right? They got their success in 10 years. And 3 of those years, he said, was dedicated solely to raising national consciousness. Solely dedicated to that. Now, that was because that was him and his organizing capacity. Now, another person probably couldn't have done that. They probably could have tried to do it, and they may not have even had the success. And they probably would have walked away and said, man, these people don't want anything. But he had the organizing capacity. He had the organizing capacity to get in the midst of all of that lack of consciousness and begin to move it. And he did that because he was an engineer in his thinking. He was an engineer by trade. So by being an engineer by trade, he thought a certain way. He was able to organize. But 3 years went into the national consciousness phase. Frantz Fanon, making an assessment of the Algerian Revolution, said the same thing. He said one of the weaknesses was they lacked national consciousness. And he spoke about the need for that. The need for that. That was one of the things that when Che Guevara looked at the Congo, when Che Guevara went to the Congo to be a part of the group, Lumumba's group after, Lumumba was unseated. And, and he left from there, he said, he noticed their lack of the consciousness and stuff like that as well. So, so that's a part of the process, Yeah, it's never the person. I believe the point that I'm making is whether the time period or not, they all understood the need to focus on the consciousness, because I'm quite sure people tried to do the work before Cabral tried. He wasn't the first one that did it, but the point that I'm making, I'm trying to just draw the line across all these different struggles in different time periods, because Cabral was struggling in the 70s. And so even when I studied the Cuban Revolution of the 50s, they talk about that, because the Cuban Revolution, when they first tried it in the beginning of the 50s, it didn't work. It was a debacle. It didn't work, So they got all arrested, and because of Amnesty International, they got freed and they got kicked out the country. So all of them got kicked out the country, and then so Castro, they ended up in Mexico. Che Guevara wasn't even in Cuba at the time. He was coming through South America. And, coming through Colombia, he ended up in Mexico, and that's where he met Castro at. And then they re-entered the country in the later part of the 50s. And they acknowledged that they had to do the consciousness building. So I guess that's the only emphasis that I'm making, Yes, it's the time period, but any time period we go in, we're going to see that building consciousness is a part of the work. All right? It's a part of the work. All right, my brother. I see. You're not gonna see my angle. But yeah, people dissatisfied. Trust me, because I've been working inside our communities. You know what I'm saying? People dissatisfied. Think we might think they not. You know what I'm saying? But people dissatisfied. And I think that's another thing too. You know what I'm saying? Because I do so much work on the ground and worked in the prison systems, I got a chance to see the people firsthand. Our people are dissatisfied. We just don't got enough qualified people who believe in our people that's working amongst our people. That's what's lacking. That's what's lacking. It's not a dissatisfied. It's not the fact that people not dissatisfied. You know what I'm saying? We looking at these Negroes and thinking these Negroes make up the mass of our people. These Negroes are not the mass of us. Those Negroes are the exception. You know what I'm saying? But when you go into those communities, you know what I'm saying, and you work with those people, because we, like I say, I was around them. Our people are dissatisfied. We don't have a strong enough, competent enough leadership of people who understand what's happening, that's willing to work amongst the people, right? Most of our people that got knowledge, all we doing is critiquing the people and standing afar from the people. We're making these critiques, and we're not going in there making adequate assessments. I know firsthand, here in Baltimore City, people are dissatisfied. Make no mistake about that. You saw what happened in Baltimore when that Freddie Gray thing occurred. It's just no organization was ready to take that energy nowhere. You know what I'm saying? Not even PLM. Nobody was prepared at the time to really move that energy. And I talk about that also in my green book. But these people, they was ready. The energy was there. And that's how it went away because, like I say, the leadership wasn't just there. We are dissatisfied. We are dissatisfied. But I do agree, like I'm telling you, all what you're saying, I agree because I've studied all of that. So I'm not in disagreement with any of what you're saying. I'm not in disagreement with the revolutionary times and none of that. I'm not in disagreement with none of that. I do agree. I think the only piece that I'm adding in is that I'm more so assessing the lack of the people who are working with the people. That's my assessment. See, my assessment is not the masses. My assessment is the people who's supposed to know that's not working with the masses. That's the difference. Because there is a problem right there. We got to get out there. We got to get out there and work with the people. You know, we got to go work with the people because people are dissatisfied. People want to know how to move. They want to know what's going on. They want knowledge. You know, people want knowledge. Right now, you know, I got brothers, you know, that reach out to me every day from the institutions. You know, but people are not ready, you know. Well, we're gonna have to lead up one day, my brother. So we're gonna work our angles. I'll continue to work my angle, you know, with a total belief and faith in our people, you know, and I'll continue to move that. And then at the end of the day, you know, history always tells the story, you know what I'm saying? It's gonna let the world know who's what, you know. So even if I'm 100% wrong, you know, the one thing that history will say is that he was 100% committed. You know, he never betrayed the people. You know, he was just wrong in his analysis, you know, and I can live with that. I can live with being wrong in my analysis, but we got to do something. You know, we got to do something. And I believe that, you know, with my successes so far, I believe that I'm pretty much going in the right direction. You know, I don't believe I have the total answer. I don't think that. I don't even want to think that. I believe that I have a part of the problem figured out. I believe that much. I can live with that. A part of the problem figured out, you know. So I'll continue to push that way. But like I say, the things that you have said in terms of the history and all of that stuff, you know, I don't disagree with that. You know, I know the power of people. I know the power of people, and I know that when you get people involved, you know, the work that we do is a humanizing work. And part of that work is how do you pull people into it? How do you get people in to get into what needs to be done? And I think that is therein what differentiates a lot of individuals, you know, as we do the work. But it's a powerful work, though. You know, working with people who don't want to be working with people, man, who don't see their truth yet, who don't recognize their power. I think work with those types of people and really detecting that they are genuine people and being able to just, you know, really dig in with them. Like, you know, it opens people up. And I think part of what's missing is that how to get people in so they can become humanized. Like the struggle or liberation work or upliftment work or change work, like it should humanize people because that should be their greatest education. Like the greatest part of their education should be in doing that work because it's nothing like it. You know, saving lives and transforming communities and transforming people so we can see the bigger picture. Because at the end of the day, it's not about just trying to figure out how to get a bunch of corner stores. So I'm clear about that, you know. But at the same time, we're not going to knock the person that's trying to get a little corner store, you know. But I know it's not about just trying to get us a bunch of corner stores or a bunch of barbershops. You know, I know there are stages to it and there's a bigger picture. And I think the bigger picture is grasped when people get deeper in and their consciousness begins to expand. So when we develop those tactics to expand their consciousness, then people can see like, whoa, this thing is that big. Yes, it's that big. We are being systematically exploited and destroyed, in this land, and it's being done in all areas. We can look in the social sphere. We've been systematically exploited and destroyed. If we look in the economic sphere, exploited, destroyed. Political, exploited, destroyed. So I'm clear, right? We are being kicked, we're being robbed, we're being murdered, we're being assassinated. So I'm clear about all the things that are happening. Some of us are content with the ignorance. Some of us are content with the ignorance. Some of us are a part of the problem. Like you know how you like to talk about the class, and I agree. Some of us have joined in at a class level, and because we are at a class level, we are able to be a part of the exploitation of other people that's of another class. So I know all of that exists. All of that exists. All that is true. None of that is not true. All that is true. And all of that must be combated. We work our plans, and we struggle, and we strive to figure out how to work the plans together. We work on that there. How do we bring everything together? How do we bring our unique skill sets that we have? How do we bring them together, to create what's needed to function at the higher level? That's where we at with that, my brother. So you say you are doing a great service, absolutely not challenging you or fighting you. We are on the same mission, just not in the same place. When the social times are unbreathable enough, more people will look for the organized revolution. Life has to be unbearable for people to shift their consciousness. That's what prison does for some. Yeah, I agree. Prison does do that for some, and else. And at the same time, there are a lot of people in prison who just sit there and become, content as well. But yeah, I do agree though. I do agree. It's about the conditions and how you interpret those conditions. It's like many people might say, wisdom come with age, and we know, some of us know that isn't always the case. Wisdom follows those who age, who have studied their experiences in life. Like wisdom doesn't follow every person who age. So that applies throughout the board. Some of us are in the communities, and some people are satisfied, some people are dissatisfied. Some people get locked up, and because it's get locked up, they begin to wake up and get clear. So it's how we respond to whatever those experiences are. It's how we approach those experiences, and what we begin to learn from those experiences is what begins to shape us and open us up. And then at some point, it becomes our own self-initiative. It becomes the self-initiation that we put into the further development of ourselves. That's what it comes down to. So I have the consciousness I do from being raised in youth homes and adult prisons. That's what radicalized me. Oh yeah, my brother, that'll do it. that will do it. Being in them places, most that would do it. Correct. We understand that business is not the whole thing, but we can still build cooperative economics while pushing towards political economy. Yes, I never said we was against cooperative economics. I don't define cooperative economics the same as as a business, right? So that's the difference, right? So I think with the terms, we got to be, whenever we having conversations, we got to be clear with the terms. Like, so when a person talking to me, I think the best thing a person can do is question, what do I mean by what I say? Because I'm never speaking from the traditional definition of none of that stuff, because I'm 30 years past it. So I'm never speaking from the traditional definition. I think so. The best way to get clear is to question me. What do you mean by this or that? And then you allow me to explain, because I'm looking at things. So when I say the businesses, for me, cooperative economics is not even business. See, cooperative economics is a social structure. It's a social system. It's not even business. Like, business is something that Europeans came up with. That's their concept. Like, business is their concept. Business is for them. Business is another form of warfare, the same as politics. So business, politics, and war for Europeans are all the same. So when I say for me, I say, yeah, some people are in the trying to do the little corner business and stuff like that, which is cool. I'm never going to knock a person for doing that. You know what I'm saying? I'm not going to say you shouldn't do that. You know what I'm saying? I guess the point that I was trying to make is that I don't want people to think like that's what we're doing this work for. Because we can begin to think that the work is just to keep on trying to pop up businesses, little teeny businesses. And that in and of itself doesn't get us to any type of liberation or sovereignty. So that's the point that I really was trying to make, is like not knocking it, but more so saying I want to make it clear for the people that I do work with, that as they enter into the process of doing the work, they become more clear in realizing that it's bigger than the barbershop, the hair salon, and so on and so forth. But if you are in that particular field, and you're feeding your family, you're doing well, then that's what you do. I'm saying that if you enter into this work for liberational purposes, at some point, the realization kick in that it's bigger than, us trying to build a million Black, individualized businesses. That's the only point that I was attempting to make, just saying how the struggle is a humanizing experience, right? So we are humanized when we are engaged in the process of liberation, when we're going through all of the dynamics that are involved in that process, it humanizes the sincere. When you're engaged in the process to transform a society or to liberate a people, that experience in and of itself humanizes you, because we have been dehumanized in this society to a great extent. And by dehumanization, what I mean, we have been made to be less than what it means to be human in the African sense. We've become more aggressive towards one another, more cynical, more distrustful of one another. And not to say that some of that stuff is not justifiable, but I'm just saying the fact that when we look at each other, if we see, if every time I see a Black person, I see a potential enemy, then something has happened to me, because we once didn't see ourselves that way. Something has happened, so we have to be in a process where we can become more humanized, cautious, yes, wise, yes, alert, yes, but also possessing the ability and the capacity to see the Black human heart, the Black human heart. When a person see me, I want you to see a real Black man. I don't want you to see a potential thief, a potential criminal, a potential crook. I don't want you to see that when you see me. So that's the reason why I put all of me out there, so you can have something to judge me by. I give you all of me. A person, if you listen to me long enough, you're going to know everything about me, because I don't hide nothing. I was locked up before. I used drugs. I got shot. All this stuff. Why? Because I use all my stories. So I give you so much, so you can have something to really, really judge me by, because we got to get to a place where we see each other as Black human beings. We have to get back there. So that's what this is about. So that's the work that I do. I do a humanizing work, right? Liberation work is humanizing work. And yes, I'm 100% for the liberation of Black people. And I do not believe, that is going to happen here amongst these white people. I don't have no faith in that. That's not my belief. But I do believe that we must work wherever we find ourselves at. Wherever we are at, that's where we must commence to do our work, with the thought in mind of going to another place or getting to another place. So that's what we are attempting to do here, in Baltimore City with the organization PLM. So I got my website in the chat. I put it in there again. 1, 2, 3. PLM. 5.1. So that's the website to my organization. You can go in there. You can check us out. I also put the link to my latest book, Scientific Pan-Africanism. That link is in there as well, in the chat as well. If you want to purchase the book, you can purchase the book. It's a good read. And I don't say it's a good read because, I wrote it and I'm just attempting to sell you a book. That's not my disposition. All of the books that I have wrote, I write with sincere intentions, and I write for the purpose of adding to the intellectual, cultural, and spiritual and revolutionary development and expansion of Black people. So I write so that my books could be another tool in your toolkit, something that you can pull something from, something because there is going to be a whole lot in here that you are going to agree with, if not all of it. There may be some parts that you might say, I don't agree with that, which is cool, you know what I'm saying? Sometimes we just want to disagree just to disagree, though. We think that, man, we think that we can't agree with a person 100%. So we just got to find something, I'll give an example, right? That's like me listening to Baba Baruti or reading Baba Baruti, right? I don't read Baba Baruti looking for what to disagree with. I don't read Mama Maremma looking for what I'm gonna disagree with. I don't study that way. I don't read our stuff looking for what I want to disagree with. Some of us under that mindset that, I'm just going to disagree because I'm no follower. I got my own mind, my own thoughts. We've been so impacted by these people, that it got us working in ways that, was no good. If I can agree with you for 100%, then I will. I have no problem with that. I'm not looking, especially when I know your heart and I see you doing nothing but sincere and genuine work. I am not looking to disagree with you. I am not looking for that. Not looking to disagree with you. We can always have behind door conversations like Dr. Ben and Dr. Clark, right? They weren't looking to disagree with each other, but they had a friendly conversation. One of them believed that the 18th dynasty in Kemet was the greatest, and one of them believed that the 19th dynasty was the greatest. And every now and then they'll talk about that, but they didn't go into each other's work looking for what to disagree about with the other. They didn't do that. They supported one another because they knew that at the end of the day that he was doing his best job for us, and he was committed to doing the work. So they supported each other, But I watch us, and we feel a need to disagree, and we call it being intellectually rigorous. We use those terms now. I'm intellectually rigorous. Why can't we, critique each other and stuff like that? I'm not reading Baba Baruti to critique Baba Baruti. I'm not reading to critique her. I'm not doing that. You know what I'm saying? I'm not reading to critique somebody. I'm not reading to tell, oh, you was wrong, he was wrong there. I am reading to understand what you understand and to use what I can use from your understanding. That's the difference. So we got to be that way. Like I'm 100% about us, and for the record, because a lot of times people might hear me talk, they might say, well, and for the record, yes, I have read your opinions. I have read other people's works, and to this day, I still do read other people's works, but I'm an avid, but I stand firmly on, I don't believe Black people should be reading other people's work until they got a thorough understanding of who they are. I believe we should understand who we are first before we start picking up anybody else's stuff, Now, yeah, because you can learn from other people, but if you start reading other people's stuff first, and that stuff become your influence, it's going to create confusion. Because the black perspective and the Black worldview is different. And that's what needs to be developed first and foremost. You need to have your own worldview before you start taking in other people's worldviews. You don't need a Japanese or Chinese worldview or European worldview. You need a Black worldview. And then you can go out and read other people's stuff if you want to understand what they were saying and just learn some other things from them. That's just cool. You can do that, But you got to be solid standing on what it means to be a Black person. You got to have some knowledge about what our history is and what it looks like, and not just on the position of a quote unquote chattel enslavement. Because I argue this. Excuse me. I argue this right here, that chattel enslavement is not even a part of our history. Chattel enslavement is a disruption of African history. It is an interruption into the history of African people, because history is always the result of a people exercising their will on their environment. So history is an intentional creation by people, right? We didn't create chattel enslavement. Let me say it again. We didn't create that, you know. So I argue that that's a disruption and an interruption in the history of African people. It's more European history than African history. But yes, we had to contend with it because it was an intrusion. It was an intrusion, so we had to contend with it and go and move through it, but it's not our creation. Yes, we should do that, but that's not what a lot of us do, though. So that's why I brought that up. So I spoke about that because I'm watching and listening to people who just seeking out to try to disagree. And oftentimes we want to disagree just because we feel like we don't want to. We feel, from my experience, I've been talking to different people. You know, we feel like we can't be in 100% agreement with somebody else's thought process. You know, so what I do, the way I explain things and the reason why I brought that up is because part of my work is to undo some of the backwards ideas that we have adopted from being in this particular society. You know, so we move that way. You know, so we're reading a person's book just to find what I disagree with. You know, and we look, I don't agree with this. I don't agree with this right here. And the first thing we say when we listen to a person give a critique or a person give a review, they say, "Yeah, I read the book, man, but I disagree." We always start with our disagreements, right? Yeah, I read his book, or I read that book, and I disagree with him, blah, 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 blah. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, you know, I very rarely heard a person say, "Yeah, I read that book, man, and you know what, man? I was in agreement with it. I like what he said, blah, blah, blah." That's not how we do it. So that's why I brought it up, because it is an issue. It's a psychological problem, because I've been observing for a very long time, you know, and we are reading books. We are reading the works of people that's doing the work. We're reading their stuff with the intent just to disagree. So that's why I brought that up, because I've been having the conversations and I see it happening. You know, the person said, "Yeah, boy, you know, yeah, I read Scientific Pan-Africanism about it, know that, man, but I disagree." You know, we go just like that, but I disagree. You know, and it ain't like, "Well, yeah, I read the Scientific Pan-Africanism book, and I think it was a nice book." You know what I'm saying? I like when he said this, or like this, or like this, or like this. We don't do that. You know what I'm saying? Like people, like I had a conversation with a person probably like 2 years ago. And the conversation was about a book that Baba Baruti wrote. And the book was to educate the people. The book about that thick. So when the person came to me talking about it, the first thing the person wanted to talk about is what he disagreed in that book. And I said, "Man, you mean to tell me, man, that thick book, and you couldn't find nothing in that book that Baba wrote, man, that you find useful, that you can agree with?" You know? And the person paused. He was like he was dumbfounded. I said, "I'm asking that question because you lead off with what you disagreed with. What you disagree with. You know what I'm saying? You can get that to the side. I don't really care about what you disagreed with in the book. It's inconsequential to me what you disagree with. What did you agree with? What did you learn from the book? Was it useful?" You know? So that's why I brought it up, because I'm in these circles, I'm in these spaces, and I'm listening to us, and everything we are saying is what we disagree with about us. That's it. You know, we're not saying that, you know, I like this, you know what I'm saying? Like we're not taking a person's tenure into play. We're not doing that. You know, so we're not saying, "You know what, dang, man, Bob or Mama, man, they've been consistently doing this work, man, for the last 30, 40 years. You know, man, they wrote 40 books. You know what I'm saying? And every chance you get, you want to figure out what you disagree with. You know what I'm saying? That's a problem. That's a problem. Because, you know, he's not out here writing 40 books or 30 books for the last 40 years, you know what I'm saying, and nothing is in there, you know what I'm saying, running the school and all this stuff. And then to tell me you couldn't find nothing in there about how to educate the people, and he's been doing it for the last 30 years, and the first thing you say is what you disagree with? You know? That's the same thing like when a person talked about, you know, about me. I've been doing this work consistently, and many can't say it, you know what I'm saying, consistently for the last 30 years. And a person can never say they ever heard me utter the words, "I'm overwhelmed," because I've never used those words since I've been doing this work, but I've been consistent. And not only have I been consistent, I've been effective in terms of impacting lives and changing people, right? And every time people talk about me, the first thing it is what they disagree with. I disagree. So we're orientated to just disagree because we believe some kind of way at a psychological level to agree with our own people. It means that we are not exercising our own thought. So we gotta disagree to prove I got my own mind. That's idiocy to me. Yeah, but so you're conflating like two different points. I'm more so focused on that the urge to read our stuff just to disagree. I do agree that the back part of your sentence, but I like to try to stick with one issue at a time, though. I think we can maximize our points better. And what I'm saying, and most of what I'm saying is that I'm gonna use myself, right? Like when people talk about me or the stuff that they've read of mine, like it's always from a position of what they disagree with. I disagree with this, and I'm saying like that is an issue, right? That's a psychological issue, because for 30 years, me, Bob Imhotep, for 30 years, I've been doing this work, and I've been able to impact change in people's lives. Not on, people's lives, what I'm saying? Just not too long ago, we had an event and about 6 little children stood up today, was just talking, they was just sharing their insights about me. And like 6 of them stood up and at different time periods, they all talked about some type of academic achievement that I helped them, or put an academic deficit that they had that I helped them with. You know what I'm saying? I didn't even take note of it because I'm just doing this stuff naturally. But it impacted them, the children. Right? One child talked about how I helped them read. Another one talked about how I helped them with the math and so on and so forth. Right? So I'm saying that in all that I do, there's a lot of good in there. There's a lot of good in what I write because I'm not writing from nowhere. So when a person, the first thing they got to say about what I write is I disagree, that's because somewhere in them, they are compelled and urged to disagree because they believe if they agree, that some kind of way lends to them not having their own independent thought, right? And that's what we're struggling with. And that is a problem. Oh, you read the book? I'm glad. I appreciate that. Thank you. Understood. People looking for a reason. Yes, that we go, my brother. People looking for that reason to disagree. You know what I'm saying? It's not like you and I, right? Like we can have a conversation and sometimes we might hit different points, right? But it's an intellectual dialogue that we can have. That's the exception. Now, what would have become the rule on the other side is I'm going in here to disagree. Because I don't want to be in agreement with him or her. I got my own thoughts. I got my own mind. Like, it's that type of foolishness. It's that type of foolishness right there that I've been noticing, over the years. But like you just said anyway, it goes back to what you just acknowledged early on about the contentment, the sleeping people, and it's all there. It's all looped in there, and I don't expect to change that. I was just making a point. I don't expect to change that in people. They're going to be that way. I'm looking to be bound. I'm looking to build with good people, solid people who want to do good work, people who want to continue to change and get better. I'm looking for those kind of people. I'm looking for people that's competent because, I don't have the energy and the time I had 30, 20 years ago to work with people who could barely comprehend, who could barely read. I don't have that type of energy no more. So right now I need people who can read, who can comprehend, people solid, they got some principles, they want to grow, they want to evolve. They can be corrected if needed. They're willing to listen and learn from experience. Not people, who come into the movement 3 years ago and they want to argue you and you got 30 years in. Not to say I can't learn anything from you because you came in 3 years ago, but I do believe that, time and consistency over time, it does give the person the type of seniority that a person should be willing to just humble himself to and just listen. I'm not saying you got to follow blindly, but no, don't just try to argue from a place of ignorance. Don't try to talk to me about, don't talk to me about chattel enslavement and tell me that chattel enslavement destroyed our culture, and you are regurgitating something that you heard in 3 or 4 books that you read, and I'm telling you that chattel enslavement did not destroy our culture, right? Don't try to argue that. You know what I'm saying? When I spent a significant amount of time actually studying the phenomenon, and I can show and prove that the culture wasn't destroyed, you know what I'm saying? Don't sit up and try to argue me on that. You got to be humble enough to just listen and learn and say, let me get this perspective and see what Bible mean by this, and see if I can grasp this right here, right? So that's where we at with this thing, man. As always, man, I enjoy coming here, man. I missed last week, but we will be back next Thursday. As always, Black men in Africa. You come with the right questions, you come with the right engagement, the right dialogue, and I appreciate that as always. My sister Nikki Lee Nova over here. You've been rocking and rolling with us since you came on board. I appreciate you for that. And I look forward to hearing your final thoughts, when you conclude Nomo. Matter of fact, I put this email in here. If you could, send me some thoughts to this email right here. Yeah. So I just put the email, the organizational email, so you can take that down. Shoot me some thoughts on so far what you think about what you've read and where you've been at, where you at inside the book. I would love to hear your ideas and your thoughts on it. But it's a great book, though. I think you're gonna completely enjoy it all the way through. A lot of time and energy went into that. I think you're gonna really enjoy that. But I want to hear your thoughts. Any questions you have about anything that I said that I'm saying in there, you can shoot that as well. But I like to always hear what people think about what I'm saying, so you can understand the position and the angle that I'm coming from, because I like a lot of my positions are different from most people. I'm not I'm in the movement, but I'm thinking about this thing totally different, because I know that it has to be totally reconceptualized. So looking forward to hearing those thoughts. And anyone else, who feel like they got some. Chris. Man, my brother Chris Brown, I didn't see you come on here, my brother. Appreciate you, man, for coming on and joining in. So as always, Black man and Black woman, it's 10:05. We got to get out of here. Once again, we had an excellent session. See you next week, same time, same place, here at the School of Urban Philosophy, where we are always straight up, straightforward, and straight to the point. People for Hodie and race first.